All right, good morning. Now, I don't know what it says in your program, but my topic this morning is about that attitude, okay? So if there's something else, that's just a typo, forgive me. Our attitude, oh boy. You know, it's like our attitude is like kind of like a lighthouse that's always putting something out into the universe that the universe is always responding to. Think about this. Think about this. Have you ever been at a time in your life when you were single and you said to a friend, let's go out on Friday night. We'll get all cleaned up. We'll put on our best. Maybe we can meet some people with a really bad attitude. Yeah. Or if you are in a position to interview people for a job, say, and you're thinking, gee, this person, their resume looks good, they come highly recommended, blah, blah, blah. Let me spend a little time with them in an interview situation. And at the end of the day, somebody says to you, well, how'd that interview go? And well, oh, they were fantastic. They had a lousy attitude. You know, I know they're going to cost the company money. They're going to be a lot of trouble. They're going to fight with you. No, of course not. You know, attitude is like an antenna, you know, that's broadcasting something out. So with regards to this, I would say, all right, what affects our day? This is what affects our day. What we think about and how we feel. This is what affects our day. What we think about and how we feel. So you say, oh my God, I'm having a lousy day. Well then, you need to think about something else and you need to work on feeling differently than you currently feel. You know, people we know ruin their lives. Now, nobody here, I'm certain. But people we know, perhaps very, very close to us, they might even live in a dwelling similar to our own. People ruin their lives because of their own negative attitude. Look, this is the science of mind. I got to tell you the way we see it. And the way we see it is that nothing good comes from being negative, from a negative mindset. Really, nothing good comes from it. You know, what are you doing after church today? Did you say this morning, gee, maybe I can meet some really negative people on the patio? You know, people with a really stinko attitude, and maybe I can spend the rest of my day with them. Maybe they can take me down the drain with them. Yeah. That's what I'm looking forward to. See, it's easy to be negative. It is easy to be pessimistic. It takes no effort at all. That's the reason why the low road is the low road, right? Doing almost nothing, it will just take you there automatically. What's the problem with that? Well, you know, this is the thing. We have to start with a spiritual principle, and the spiritual principle is it's done unto you as you believe. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you believe that people will disappoint you, they will. But if you believe that life is good, it will be. All right? Do you really want to spend any part of your precious life being that unhappy? I don't think we do. I don't think we do. We can be happier. We can lead a more fulfilling life, you know, if we improve our attitude. I think it's that important. I think it's that big a deal. The bottom line is that we are what we think about all day long. You know, the occasional stray thought, don't worry about that. The occasional bizarre thought, fine. The mothership is here for you. Great, okay? But I'm talking about what you really focus on all day long. That's what we are. You know, good news for some of us, not such good news for others. Because our thoughts and our feelings, they're not facts, you know? They come from the way we interpret events. See, because we all bring something to the interpretation. Understand this, and we can look for new interpretations. In A Course in Miracles, there's a lesson that says roughly nothing means what I think it means, right? And it goes on further to say, I give everything the meaning it has for me. Oh, boy. So a new interpretation will change our feelings, and ultimately that will change our lives. See, it's more than just being positive or being a positive thinker. I think it's about realizing that we can be, and spiritually based, principally based, we can be on the affirmative side of life. See, we believe that God is good in the science of mind all the time. God is always good. God never stops being good. So God is good. God is love. God is for us. God is everywhere and within us. So I believe I live in a friendly universe. You know, Carl Jung said years ago, the telling question of a person's life is their relationship to the infinite. Do you have a relationship with the infinite where you are fearful, where you're doubting, where you think the infinite is working against you? Or do you have a relationship with the infinite that you say, you know what, I really believe at the deepest level that life is for me, that God is for me. So look at that relationship you have. See, I want us to choose the attitudes we lead our life with. Because our choices, I think, are what really empower us or disempower us. But our choices certainly do have the capacity to empower us to make our life exactly what we want it to be. And if not exactly, at least a lot more like we would like it to be. So I think, all right, so I'll start with this about attitude. I was thinking, what's an attitude? An attitude is an organized belief or an organized set of beliefs and feelings toward a person. I guess it could be an object or a situation. See, our attitudes predispose us to the way we behave towards something or someone, right? Haven't you ever, somebody said to you, well, how did that go? And they went, oh, they had an attitude. You know exactly what that means. When somebody says that, oh, they have an attitude, we know exactly what that means. Because our attitude makes our reaction to things actually predictable within ourselves. So there is a part of attitude, I think, that's our beliefs, right? I think there's also an emotional part of attitude that's, I'd say, was our feelings. And there's a behavioral aspect to our attitude, and that's what we do, or our actions. Often it seems to me that attitudes come from when we're young. You might grow up believing something, I'm not lovable, or I'm limited, or I don't have any choices, But the point is that from early on, they get ingrained in us. Now, if we have blindly accepted an attitude, it may no longer serve us today. And this is one of the things I would like us to think about. Just because we've had an attitude in a certain direction for a certain period of time, it doesn't mean it serves us today. So there are things that people carry as an attitude like fear or anger or depression or prejudice or self-doubt, on and on and on. And that makes us really vulnerable to a higher level of stress than I think we need to have. I mean, does anybody really feel like you want more stress in your life? I don't. I never get up and say, oh, thank you, God, for a new day. God, I hope it's really stressful today. I don't say that. So the good news is since attitudes are learned, that also means that they can be unlearned if we become aware of an attitude that is not serving us. Now, I think that unlearning rarely happens in one fell swoop. I think like everything, it's repetition, it's practice, it's spiritual practice. So, our emotions are caused internally, not by external events. Now, I know this is difficult because we like to say things like, well, they made me feel this way, or this happened out here and I felt. Now, the science of mind brings us back around to say, no, causation is within. Our beliefs about an event are the real cause of our emotional consequences. Our beliefs about it. We go, oh my God, this is so horrible. This is so bad. Nothing good will ever come from that. On and on and on and on. And it's like, well, okay, that's the real cause of your emotional turmoil there, right? It's what you're saying to yourself. See, it's not the external event, but our belief about the event. Now, just let me add in parentheses here just a little bit. Events happen in our lives. They do not define us. We are not those events. That they're just another experience that the soul is going through on its journey back to God. So, for example, if you were in, say, a loving relationship and that relationship should change form, in other words, you break up or move apart or whatever, you might be depressed about that, right? Now, the change in relationship, I would hold, did not cause you to actually be depressed. Your beliefs about the change in relationship caused you to be depressed. Because you'd have to really look at, like, what am I saying to myself? You might be saying things like, wow, I'm a failure. What's wrong with me? I'll never meet anybody again. I'm going to be alone forever. Things never work out for me. Those beliefs can be challenged and they can be changed. Right? So you are ultimately responsible for what we do. That's just the way it is. In the end, in the final analysis, there are really no excuses, right? You can have reasons or you can have results, right? In the end, look, you blame others all you want, right? You can blame yourself all you want. You can blame circumstances all you want. But what will make a difference? If I make a new choice and I really stand behind it. That will make a difference. See, this is not a dress rehearsal. This is actually the performance. And I know so many of us live like, well, this is just a rehearsal. This is just a rehearsal. And down the road, I'm going to get it all together, and then I'm going to really participate fully. No, this is the performance right now. See, a problem is, it occurs to me, and this will not be news to many of us, is that we should all over ourselves, right? That we say things like, well, life should have no issues. Life should be smooth all the time. Everything should be easy. People should be the way I want them to be. Don't you think so? I certainly do. I should do better than my best in every situation. If we have attitudes that would eliminate those shoulds, far fewer things, I think, would disturb our peace of mind. Right? Because I think that behind every negative attitude, there is probably, if we look deep enough, there's probably some should. So when you catch yourself being negative, go back in and say, okay, where am I shoulding? Because there's got to be some should here. It could be conscious, it could be unconscious, that leads to something disturbing. There are traps in our thinking, I think, that account for a lot of the negative feelings. And these are things I think we go to again and again. One of them is, I think, that so often people demand certainty of a positive outcome. So demanding certainty from a positive outcome is way over here, and way over here is knowing, believing, affirming, and trusting that everything is always working out for my highest and greatest good. Right? But I'm not going to proceed unless I have a guarantee of a positive outcome. I think that that's one of those traps. So I've been thinking this week about what these are. And so, or we say that something is just, oh my God, it's just too hard, or that's impossible. Now, I think that's kind of a cop-out a lot of times. Now, this may not be you, but I notice for myself, I'll say, oh my God, that's impossible, this is going to be too hard. And really what that is that it's just difficult. Well, the fact is, in life, lots of stuff is difficult. It doesn't mean we don't do it. It's just difficult. But it's disempowering to tell myself, oh my God, that's just going to be too hard. That's just going to be impossible. We've already done millions of things that were too hard, and we did them anyway, right? We've all done that. We've done millions of things in the course of a lifetime that were hard, and we did it, moving right along. We might say that our life is awful just because something's not going the way we think it should go. When in fact, lots of things in the course of a lifetime don't go the way we think they should go, but it doesn't mean that our life still isn't wonderful, filled with love, filled with wonderful people, filled with meaningful things. It may be that we put ourselves down if we have failed at a particular task. I think this is really common, that people will just say horrible things to themselves, really horrible things to themselves. And I think it just doesn't serve us. It's like, okay, well, I didn't do so well at that. There are other things I do well. All right? Because if you just go off on this tangent of, oh my God, I'm just an incompetent, no good comes from that. All right? I think that sometimes we sort of label or rate other people in negative terms because they maybe didn't measure up to what we thought they should do, or they didn't come through for us in some way. I also think we often hold ourselves to impossible standards, because what that does is that makes us really, I think it makes us anxious. Sometimes we require other people to give us love and approval before we love and approve of ourselves. And I think that's backwards, the way spiritual principle is. I think that we have to love and approve of ourselves, and then the universe can give us what we are willing to give ourselves. But the universe cannot bring us anything we are not willing to do for ourselves, is how that works. I also notice that sometimes we tend to think in really black or white terms, that it's all or nothing. And anything short of perfect is a total failure. Well, God, that's really difficult to please, isn't it? And I think the other thing is that sometimes because of our childhood or some other difficult past experience, happiness is now impossible. And you could make that a self-fulfilling prophecy. But Ernest Holmes teaches us in the textbook that principle is not bound by precedent. Right? So your past does not dictate your future. It does not. So all of these beliefs, I think, cause self-defeating attitudes. And so we choose them either consciously or we choose them unconsciously, but now is the time to turn them around. Here we are at the beginning of a wonderful new year, a mostly blank slate. And if there's things already written on your slate in these first few days, just erase them. Okay, that's okay. But some things, yes, okay, there are some things we cannot change. Everybody understands that. We're all big people here. What I need to have is a little more acceptance in those areas. But different people respond to the same situation completely differently. Isn't that amazing? I think that's just extraordinary. It can even happen in a family. I know this has happened in our house, in my family a lot, with my siblings, where we will talk about a specific event, a very specific event, but we all remember it differently. How is that possible? We were all there. We were not chemically altered in any way. How is it that we can all remember it completely differently? Well, because we're all different. There can be one event with many different reactions. And changing an attitude always seems to me, always involves choosing a new belief. Oh my God, that sounds like an enormous task. How do I do that? Well, it occurs to me that we're always affirming something. We're talking to ourselves from the morning we get up in the morning till the moment we go to sleep at night. There is a conversation going. Sometimes it's a big, loud conversation. Sometimes it's a small conversation. Sometimes it's just a little voice, either encouraging us or bringing us down. All right? So we're always affirming something. So I'm going to suggest to us that we affirm things that are good, that are life-giving, that are on the affirmative side of the street. Some people spend most of their life blaming, but blame doesn't solve anything. And my encouragement to us is that if you have a little piece of your mental energy that goes into blame, to just give that up right now. Because that's energy that you could be putting into the creative fire of your life, producing something great. All right? I was thinking about the difference between having an insight, a spiritual insight, a little personal illumination, and hindsight. Now, everybody's great with hindsight, right? Everybody's great. Everybody does the Monday morning quarterback. Look at me talking about sports. Everybody does the Monday morning quarterback thing really, really well, right? But insight is when we have an experience and we actually learn something from it so that we are different. That's a real spiritual insight to me. With a hindsight, what happens often is that people kind of go into this magical thinking where I tell myself something, like, oh, I would have done it differently if I'd known that. Well, yes, absolutely. The day after the lottery numbers have been drawn, if I knew those numbers, I would have played them. Yeah, wouldn't you? We would have, and as with everything else, if I knew that truck was coming through the intersection, I would have slowed down, or just on and on and on. If I knew you were going to be a total nut job, I never would have said yes, right? Insight increases our self-acceptance. When we become aware of something and we learn something and we do something different, that increases our self-acceptance. I see an experience in a new way, right? In a different way. And, and I put it to work for me. So it's not a wasted thing. I take the good from it and use it. Now, this sounds simple, and simple is one thing, but easy is different, right? It's simple like so much of spiritual principle, but it's not necessarily easy. But repetition is what makes the difference. Think of it this way. You don't go to the gym once and expect tremendous results, do you? You don't eat a salad once and think it's going to transform your body. These are practices, they're about repetition. You and I, we have the power to do or be practically, I'll say practically, anything we want. But probably not everything we want, but that's another talk. Right? So I think we have tremendous creative power within us. There are areas where we may be limited, and I think this has been huge on my spiritual journey. I will tell you that to accept that there are areas where I am limited, like I'll say to Reverend Mark in the office during the day, we'll talk about something and I'll say, I have no skill in that area. I really don't. It's taken me years to get to that point to admit, I'm not good with that. I don't know what we should do. What are we going to do about it? Who do we need to call in? Ghostbusters. I don't know, somebody, but somebody who is good at it. We need, because it's okay, because you know what, admitting, you know what, I'm not skilled in that area, that actually allows me to have greater peace of mind. Rather than beat myself up over not being good at something or not being skilled in a particular area, I can actually have peace of mind by just accepting, you know what, that's not my bailiwick. I just have no training in that particular area. It seems to me that sometimes a lack of satisfaction is good. Because in some cases, if we have a lack of satisfaction, then that can force us to take something to a new level if it's that important to us. So I think it's worth considering when we have those divine discontent, you know, a lack of satisfaction as a friend, not an enemy. So all these things that occur outside the parameters of our free will, I think are subject to changing with the wind, right? But only what we have inside of us is forever. This is what the science of mind teaches us. Only what's inside of us. Inside of us is the source of all good, is the source of all love. Inside of us is the source of all creativity. So I'll ask you this morning as we close, what would you like your life to be? You know, be creative. Make a list about that. It takes so little effort to do that. And then I'd ask you, what is it that stands in the way of you getting that? You know, what do you want? You know, how do you stand in your own way? And this, I think, perhaps the most important thing, what's the consciousness I need to have? What's the consciousness I, as an individual, need to possess so the most natural thing, the most natural consequence of that consciousness is what I desire? Like, how do I need to be on the inside for that to show up on the outside? Let's pray. Thanks. All right, so we turn our attention inward now, knowing that right here where we are, the fullness, the allness of God's Spirit is present. And I claim for each and every one of us, because I know we are one with God, and also because we are connected on the unseen side, I claim for each and every one of us that we have an attitude that embraces life, that supports life in being more of itself by means of us. We have an attitude that absolutely sustains us in and through everything that we experience. I know we live on the affirmative side of the street, that for each and every one of us, life is good because our life is one with the life of God. So we include in our prayer today our family members and our friends and our loved ones, and we remember that God in its fullness, in its allness, is right where they are. We let our prayer be a blessing in the world around us. So all of those things that look so troubling to us, we say God's perfect presence is right there. There is infinite wisdom, there's divine love, there is peace, there is supply. All needs are met. We bless our church, we bless all churches everywhere. We bless synagogues and temples and mosques and ashrams, all paths to God. And I'm absolutely certain that we are blessed by being together in consciousness today, that there is raising up for all of us. And so with a full heart, I give thanks that this is the truth. I release this word, and so it is. Together we all say,